Hello, Bendy Vision here, and I'm back in Bendy in the Dark Revival. I'm back at this spot because there's this book right here, The Mug and the Maiden. It is completely long, so I decided to spend this whole video reading it. I absolutely suck at reading, but I'm gonna try my best since this book is long, and well, you gotta appreciate this game, man. Took a long time, looks fantastic, I love it, and they made this book for a reason. So I just realized I can jump on here. So I guess I just ought to get started reading it. Sorry about my bad trying to pronounce some stuff. I'm gonna try my best. So, The Mug and the Maiden, Volume 1 by Sir Wilton Moore, Chapter 1, The Dangerous Forest. Once upon a time in a faraway land there lived a mug of cheese, but it was not an ordinary mug of cheese as you would find in any home or kitchen of the age. No, this mug of cheese was a distant descendant of one of the three grand flagon kings, the same kings who have charged on horseback to defend their capital city during the unforgettable conquest of the previous century. To which of these flagon kings he hailed from, the mug was unsure, but still, there was an honor and courage in his heart. His family line herald of deeds long past that had forever changed the course of stood history. Did he have a name? Of course! All mugs of cheese have names. This is common knowledge, just as every fruit bat is really named Stanley. The mug of cheese was named Richter the Cracked. What a name, I can hear you say. Cracked indeed. This mug of cheese bears no damage that I can see. Fall silent, you small-minded bass, for therein lies our interrogating story. Let's begin at the beginning. It was a hot winter day in the forest, one of those days where everything is dull brown. The lake was still, the birds had shut up, and the trees were built sticks in the overcast skies, save for a long pine that skimmed the clouds above like a printer's brush. It was on this day that Mr. Darrell Mouse was in a hurry. He had just been named as Vermin of the Year by the society brethren that lived under the old church, and it was customary for the honored to bring fine port wine cheese to the ceremony. There was only hours to locate some of the previous cuisine. Fortunately, Mr. Darrell Mouse knew exactly where to find it, the dark cellar below the governor's castle. But, unfortunately, as he approached the loose plank of wood in the old wall, he failed to realize that the heavy rains that had come during the night had passed moisture into the plank, making it far heavier than usual. Thus, when he pushed the plank with all his might, it lifted just enough to push his body only halfway through. But his strength just couldn't contain with the weight of the plank, and his arms failed. The plank snapped back down, crushing him flat. After all this, the story is not about Mr. Darrell Mouse. Or had you forgotten the mug of cheese already? I can see how you might connect the two. Mr. Darrell Mouse was, after all, looking for cheese, and we were talking about a mug of cheese just before. Sadly, I must inform you that there is no relative between Richter the Cracked and the rodent who is now nothing more than smushed guts inside the wall. Except that there is! For it was the death of Mr. Darrell Mouse that started all the trouble. You see, when things die, they tend to smell, and that's just what Mr. Darrell Mouse did. But that's not all. His body, pinned between the outside and inside of the wood wall, had made the perfect passage for the hot winter wind. The wind therefore carried the stench of this decaying mouse carcass deeper into the governor's home. Like a snaking, twisted wisp of terror, the smell scented into a little tavern near the courtyard, the castle. Here soldiers would spend many long hours when there was no blood loss to smoothen with battle. Strong allies and red meats filled the menu from back to front at this rustic, medieval greasy spoon. Mostly the customers came to look upon the barmaid and Maxman, who was actually named Riti, I think. Riti was by far the best-looking creature in all of the governor's country. There was a beautiful dear woman just over the hill, but no one knew that. By day, Riti scuttled her tavern so clean you could eat off it. which was unfortunate as it was place you indeed would be eating. Since it was a tavern by night, she served her customers with charm, grace, but mostly with drinks. Did I mention that Riddy was married? Well, I mention it now, Riddy was married. Her husband's name was James. He didn't do much until he died. The smell of Mr. Deviled Mouse knocked him flat, my friends, was that. Oh dear, this story's barely begun and we're already killed 2 major characters. Damn. Sorry, I had to burp. And needless to say, Riddy was deeply distraught by the whole thing, but 20 or so minutes later, she realized she could have moaned forever and went to buy some cheese. Ah yes, don't worry, dear reader, this time the mention of cheese will probably guide us to the being our focal hero of the tale. Also, this is a good time to start a new chapter. Chapter 2. A new chapter. Okay then. Riddy entered the cheese shop with her guns blazing. I'm speaking metaphorically, of course. Oh, thank God. By which I mean she entered the cheese shop quite determined by some cheese. This was because just the night before, as her husband, James, was taking note of the weird smell in the room, she had invented a delicious new concoction, a cheddar cider. It was sure to be hit with her patrons. After all, the governor's country only had 2 experts, cheese and grapes, and she couldn't possibly make a drink from a grape. Put back to the cheese shop scene. Riddy knocked on the counter loudly with her fist, causing the nearby cat to do absolutely nothing, as cats do. From behind the wall, she heard a stir, as someone was crashing through piles of cheese to make their way toward her. Emerging gloriously from torn yellow curtains, an old man came into view. He was giant in stature, with a long gray beard bobbing along, and stuck within his beard were all the manner of cheese crumbs and wedges, wrapped tightly within his hairs. But yet he held even more cheeses on ropes pulled across his cheese with loops of porous linked his sausages over one shoulder. His eyes were big and his ears were bigger still. A smile of kindness interrupted from his face as he locked eyes with Riddy. My, the cruds are kind to me this hour. Hello and welcome, he bellowed. Riddy bellowed low and probably began to cry. The shop owner looked at her perplexed. What did I say wrong? The bar maiden sniffed and snooted as finally answered, Forgive me, for my husband has just died and I am out of Swiss. I am going to pause now in the story to ask myself why Mr. Deviled Mouse went to the cellar in the governor's house for cheese if there was cheese in a shop nearby. I think it's past that we overlook this glaring problem in the plot, don't you? Now, back to the story at hand. Riddy purchased a large amount of cheese from the shop owner. She bought cheese wheels and cheese melts and cheese slices. She bought cheese whistles and cheese bread. She bought cheese paper and cheese sandwiches. Damn, there's a lot of cheese in this. She bought so much cheese, in fact, that she had lost track of she had obtained, and she dumped all of the formage into a large barreled sack for the journey to return to the tavern. Goodbye, Riddy, the shop owner called as he waved farewell. Goodbye, Danielle, she called back. His name was Maron, by the way. I love this book. Overbeared by her treasure, Riddy made her way home, following the main road to the castle. But, as it always happens, the road was now under-repaired. A man with a skinny mole was plowing up the dirt so that he could put down cobblestone. 4 of his associates were standing by, watching him. The job would only take a few years to finish, but Riddy was in a hurry and she followed the detour sign that had taken her to a different road to her left. Unfortunately, no one could read in the governor's county. Oh, man. I've been saying that wrong. Oh, damn. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry. I suck at reading. So she went right instead. Bishop, took her deep in the forest where absolutely nothing of interest happened, except something of interest did happen. As she trotted on through the forest, her sack of cheese weighing her down, muttered complaints all the way. Little did she know the danger lay just ahead. This danger was cunning and dangerous and had one of the out-of-space eyebrow hairs that drives you nuts when you're talking to someone who has one. This danger we call Bernard, the big, ugly lizard man who wears a blue cloak. Bernard didn't often have visitors in his house. This is because he lived outside. Also, he was rather fond of human flesh, which made him very unpopular. Oh, I see why. So obviously, you can see the drama unfolding here. The beautiful but tired Riddy roughing and puffing up the winding path as she approaches a certain doom. Bernard watching him from below a nearby tree, licking his lips. Oh, the tension is this intense, is it not? At this point in time, we must pause again to ponder all the possibilities that can happen now in our story. Two characters have died already. Surely a third wouldn't hurt anything. Are you perhaps just reading the story because you want to see who will get the axe next? You are a little rat, did you know that? Well then, let's see what happened next. Bernard stepped from behind his hiding spot, his eyebrow hair gleaming in the fading sun. Dear madam, why must you pass through so fast? He called with his eyes glimmering. I must get home, Bernard, because for one, it's getting late and I have customers to serve, and second, because you eat people, Riley replied. I see why. Popplecock, babble dash, cop swap. I won't hear these lies against my character, he disdained. For I, Bernard, the big ugly lizard man who wears a blue cloak and have completely reformed myself. Reedy squeezed suspiciously at him. You have? Bernard put a hand to his heart. I have. I no longer prowl or pounce. I won't attack or bounce. I will not kill or maim or tear. I won't crush or even bite you anymore. I promise I won't devour anyone. My gosh, you become a bore. If you aren't going to be the danger in the story that I come all the way with 100 pounds of cheese for nothing, Rudy gambled. She boosted her sack further up her soldiers, and turned with an angry grunt. But Bernard waved at her in a panic. Wait, it's all a ruse. I intended to eat you, dear woman. I swear, he cried. It's all a trick, you see. A new angle. It worked on some guy yesterday. Oh, please stay. Okay, this story is weird. Rudy sighed, her strength just about gone for a long adventure she had taken since she left home that morning. She turned back to face Bernard. All right, she said, but your part in the story better lead to an unexpected turn of events. Oh, it will. Bernard clapped and waggled his clawed finger to motion her to draw nearer. Just wait until the next chapter. Chapter 3, the next chapter. Seriously? Okay. All looked quite dire for Riley. Bernard had her within his grasp. Surely it would just be mere moments before his claws collapsed upon her head. Oh, what a horrible end for Riley. Needless to say, I am worried for her. But, as luck would have it, miles and miles away, 20 years earlier, something amazing happened. 20 years earlier? Oh my god. 2 mugs of cheese, a grotto, and a mozzarella welcomed their first son into the world. I don't think I need to tell you his name. It was Dave. No one liked Dave. Okay. After that, their second son came forth. Richter the Cracked. Just called Richter at that time. Richter at that time. Richter spent his early life stealing cowbells and putting them on skunks. This way, people always knew when danger was nearby. Needless to say, Richter was one smart mug of cheese, but all could not remain perfect forever, and suddenly the great skunk famine began. Richter found his way in Ara and sought a new purpose. Fortunately, there is an opening in Governor's County for an adventure at that time, and since he was descendant of the 3 grand flagging kings, he was boosted to the head of line, because as we are quite aware, even in older times, it's not what you know, it's who you are, it's who you know. Thus the adventure of Richter began. Shut up, Fun. He braved deep dungeons, he slayed the great beasts, he climbed the highest mountain peaks, he sailed around the world, desperate to find the fact that he didn't own a boat. Oh. Richter was truly the stuff of legend, but did I mention the curse? Yes, fair readers, there's a curse. A finished and terrible curse. Oh my god. One morning while Richter was in the governor's county, he came upon a witch named Witch. Okay. The witch had just pulled a pound cake for her oven, where she then proceeded to start ingesting it right there on the front walk of her home. At once, Richter knew this creature was pure evil, eating cake this early in the morning and without ice cream. This was truly a fiend that needed to be vanquished. Oh my god. Richter jumped her fence and pulled his sword. Would you like some pound cake? The witch offered. It looked quite delicious. Richter would not let himself be seduced into early morning cake, so he approached closer with his sword at her throat. The witch began to sweat with a mouthful of crumbs. I also make a mean scone if you want to wait. Now, no gentleman or gentle mug could refuse a good scone. So Richter withdrew his sword and potentially waited for the witch to create these new buttery pastries. But what he didn't know was that the witch accidentally had bumped her table and had added within the mixture a vial of cursed liquid. See, I told you there was a curse. You were fair warned. Oh my gosh, I was warned. The moment Richter ate of the scones, he fell into a deep sleep. The witch, baffled, finished her cake and proceeded to get a civil service job in a nearby town. So she wasn't a witch in the first place then. As the years rolled by, we're going through years again? All that remained of the witch's house was carried off by elves, and her garden began overgrown. This left only Richter, asleep in the forest with no end to his dreaming in sight. But the story thankfully does not end here. For, as luck would have ended, a giant man covered in cheese with big eyes and big ears wandered past the sleeping mug. In case you've forgotten, this was the cheese shop owner, Murray, sometimes called Bill. There's so many names in this. Unable to resist cheese of any kind, even a mug of this stuff, Murray took Richter to his shop and set him on a shelf. Here Richter sat for many years until this very fateful day. You see, in Rider's haste to gather up all the cheese she had purchased, she had swept a few things that did not belong to her in the sack as well. These items included the cat on the counter. Okay, so she stole a cat. A personalized pen, Murray's cash box. I think she'll be hearing about this one eventually. And the last but not least, Richter himself, still deeply asleep. So now that our two stories have gotten together, we'll discover what happened next to Ridley and Richter in the climax chapter. Chapter 4, the climax chapter. This is really specific. It was the same hot winter day. It was the same hot winter day in the forest, and Mrs. Derbold Mouse was finally starting to get concerned. Just down the road, Riley was being drawn toward an almost certainly bloody and horrific end to her life. Bernard was just moments from taking her within his lizard's jaw, and mere hours from trimming his eyebrows. Reedy stood her ground. She was no dimmis in distress, whatever the hell that says, but simply a person who was pretty darn tired by this point. She pulled the burlap sack of cheese from her body and swung it hard with every last bit of strength she had left in her. An eerie shattering crack broke through the silent trees as the bag made contact with Bernard's shocked face. His teeth flew in all directions, falling like pebbles to the ground. His eyebrows dislodged and rolled into a nearby stream. His jawbone turned completely around and planted itself on the back of his head. Bernard ran screaming into the woods, never to be seen again this week. His cries faded, and the forest once again fell soft and quiet. A cow walked by. Rady, still standing with her sack outstretched in her arms, stood wide-eyed at what just happened. Surely no cheese in her bag was hard enough for that kind of impact. As she placed her burlap sack upon the dirt and peeled it open, she was amazed to find Richter, the mug of cheese inside, and looking quite dazed. He had awakened, and the curse was finally lifted. Somewhere behind a desk, the witch looked up and nodded with a smile. But, oh dear reader, look what was now upon this mug body, a giant and elegant crack. This very mark of a warrior. His hero's journey was finally complete. Richter the Crackhead had emerged. Yes, it is true that Richter really didn't do anything important in the attack on Bernard. Just by Richter being where he was at the perfect time, he had saved Ridley. The fates were them. Richter and Ridley talked and laughed and ate cheese until the sun went down. Finally, they packed up their picnic and headed back to the tavern, where they were met with cheers of excitement. This is mostly because the guys have found out that Ridley was now single. Okay. As the night wore on into the early morning of the hours, the tavern remained alive in the castle courtyard with singing and dancing and cheddar cider. Oh, what a celebration! But like all parties of such proportion, eventually everyone sobers up and you have to go home. Before long, it was dawn. The sun began to rise steadily in the west, marking a fresh adventure on the horizon. A wind of a new direction began to blow with a more steady pace. It skittered across the ground and found its way between the floorboards of the governor's castle. Here, against all odds, it found the nearby remaining body of Mr. Deviled Mouse. The wind carried the stench for beyond the borders of the castle over the mountains, and deep within a dark cave where Evil slept. "What the heck is that smell?" said Evil. just evil, got it. Awakening with hellfire burning behind his eyes, eventually news of the great evil spread from town to town until it reached the ears of Richter the Cracked. He polished his sword and gathered some crumbs of bread to store in his mug. Wearing his best expression of courage, Richter once again set off to conquer the day. His story was not yet over. But for now, dear reader, we return to our own lives, so let us end this tale with one closing thought, shall we? Be we cracked or small or even dead, there's always a purpose to where we all led. Be brave and strong, let us forget, fate is quite done with any of us just yet. And that's all. That's all of the Mug and the Maiden. Sorry about my terrible reading, but I tried. I probably said some words wrong. But holy crap, this video is 20 minutes. Dang, this book is long. Good job, Meatly. If you can, I would love a later update for this to get a part 2. Just like leave it right here. Meatly, if you can hear me, maybe I'll tag him or somebody tag him. I would love a part 2 to this where you put the book right here. Like, maybe there can be more parts to it. You can lay this right here. Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, Part 5. How many parts you want. I would just love a Part 2 to this. This is too great to end like that. But that's the video, guys. I'll probably make more videos out of Bendy in the Dark Revival, because there's secrets, Easter eggs, little stuff I want to discover. And I'll show them off. So, hope you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you did. And I'll just see you next time. Bye.